right.
All right, welcome back to Vet
Coming
Connect.
online.
Thanks for joining us. Vet Connect is a platform to reunite our tribes after our service or to build that tribe if you're still in the service. We talk about veterans issues, we talk about health, wellness, and a myriad of topics. Today, joining us, we have Mr. Daryl Utt from the Medal of Honor Museum. After graduating high school in 1990, Daryl joined the U.S. Army. During his service, Daryl was awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Valor for heroic actions and leadership during combat operations in Baghdad, Iraq in 2006. He was also awarded 4 Bronze Stars for achievement and service in Iraq as a Special Forces Team Sergeant. His operational detachment alpha was recognized and awarded the 2006 Larry Thorne Award for Best Operational Attachment in 10 Special Forces Group. Master Sergeant Daryl Utt retired from the U.S. Army Special Forces in January 2017. In February 2022, the President and CEO of the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation selected Daryl Utt to be the Chief of Business Operations. So, Daryl, welcome to the show today. A mouthful. You're
Yeah.
you're a war hero. We love you, brother, and we love the work that you're doing with the Medal of Honor Museum. So
Man, I appreciate that warm intro. I wish I could record that and I could play it for my wife so she could hear it. Just, man, that would really boost me up, boost me up. And man, it's
Make
such
that
an
your
honor and
alarm
a
clock.
privilege. Yeah. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you guys. You guys are doing,
Yeah.
you guys are out there doing wonderful things for the veteran community. So I appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation, man.
Absolutely.
so
Thank you for
let's
taking the time to join us.
let's
Appreciate you.
yeah, thank you so much. Let's kind of start this thing at the beginning, man. I know you've been on a lot of podcasts, and this is probably old hat to some folks who have caught your podcasts, through several other channels on YouTube and on Twitch and all the rest of it. But really, just for our audience listening today, uh, tell us about you. Where you came from. I understand you were born and raised in West Virginia, kind of grew up from modest beginnings. Tell us about that.
Yeah, modest beginnings. I like that. I grew up poor, man. That's that's an easier way to say that. Yeah, man. Born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia. A lot of people they don't know where that's at, but if you've ever seen the movie with We Are Marshall with Matthew McConaughey, that's Huntington, West Virginia. Unfortunately, it's such a tragic thing
Yeah.
to be known for, but that is where I'm from, Huntington, right where the Marshall football team crashed. That was before I was born, but a lot of people know Matthew McConaughey and all that type of stuff. But yeah, man, grew up humble beginnings. I grew up a hunter. I grew up fishing. I grew up trapping. All those different things. Played sports, and thought I had a pretty normal childhood, but it was one that definitely prepared me well for the military and the things that I was gonna be faced with.
So I think so many of us come from that same background. I grew up in a really small town in North Dakota the same way, hunting, fishing, trapping, just like everybody else. And it's funny how much you miss that stuff. Now being a city dweller, the only thing I'm trapping is the attention of my neighbors when I'm walking around in my Ranger panties outside.
Yeah, right.
Mostly complaints, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And so when you started, did you know? I mean, when did you know you wanted to be an SF dude, man? What was the
Um,
trigger?
well, I didn't know initially. To me, that was just like so far just outside of my just normal thought process because and I've mentioned this before on some of the other podcasts, but my football coach was National Guard from West Virginia, and he was Special Forces. But he was our hard nosed disciplinarian football coach as well. So I didn't even have the mind to process this whole Special Forces thing. So that was so far removed from me. I knew it was special. I knew it was really cool and all of that, but it wasn't even something that my mind could process at the time. But I was definitely interested in the military, you know, throughout my childhood. I'd read a lot, all those Vietnam era books talking about the
Yeah.
LERPs in Vietnam, Special Forces and 5 Years to Freedom, all those type of books, read a lot of those. So I was always intrigued by the military, but it was probably, I was a couple years in, because my first duty station, I came in the Army all the way back in 1990. My first duty station was Fort Ord, California. So, which is, it's been deactivated for decades now, but there weren't any, there weren't any Rangers or Special Forces at Fort Ord, California. So the first time I had a chance to kind of glimpse at the other side, like what's going on the other side, when they deactivated Fort Ord and they sent us up to Fort Lewis, Washington, we were adjacent to 2nd Ranger Battalion. And this is 1993, 1994. So that was my first exposure to a special operations unit. And I instantly knew that they were different. They were different from they were just a whole different breed of dude from what I was seeing, because I was 11 Bravo infantry and, had a pretty tough time, growing up in the infantry. Those were tough days back then. And I saw these Ranger guys. I was like, man, this is a different breed of cat. They looked different. They acted different. They were physical specimens. And then, fast forward a couple more years, I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that was my first exposure to 5th Special Forces Group. I know that 1st Group is at Fort Lewis, but I never saw those guys ever. Did see 2nd Ranger Battalion. Yeah. Never saw those guys. But the first time I got to see active duty Special Forces guys was at 5th Group. And that's what sealed the deal for me, man. Seeing those cats out on the range training, and man, that really sealed the deal. And then my brain started catching up. My West Virginia brain started catching up with my football coach and how he led, and he was Special Forces. All of those things started clicking for me. And I was like, man, I want to be part of something like that for sure.
So tell us more about your football coach and how his mentorship to you may have shaped the things that you did, or maybe the path that you took.
Yeah, for sure, man. I was able to actually reach out to him not too long ago. He actually heard Combat Story, episode 74, Ryan Fugit. That was the first podcast I'd ever done, actually.
Good one, by the way.
And yeah, thank you. I want to tell you how that one came about, if we can circle back to it, because
absolutely.
it's funny.
I'll put a little note to bring.
It's a funny story, man. It's funny. I think you guys will get a kick out of it, how that whole thing started.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, my football coach, I got to reach out to him, and I think he said he's like a young 80 or young 82 or whatever. But he was such a good, solid dude, man. Just a great male role model. Just led us through from my freshman year all the way to my senior year. We had a losing program for years and years and years, and he was a big part of turning that program around. He was just someone, we were with him all year round, because we were doing a lot of stuff in the weight room, and then of course every day during football season. But just, man, that great male role model. He was out there doing stuff with us. We I know it's not politically correct anymore, but we used to do Indian runs. If you remember the old school Indian runs where you're running in a single file and all that. He would run that with us, man. He's running with a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old just studs, man, because we were just studs back then. Yeah.
No
we were young,
tires at that point.
skinny dudes. Yeah. But he's out there running with us. He worked out with us in the weight room. He disciplined us when we needed to have discipline. And man, he was just a solid leader. And he took me up to Camp Dawson. It was either my junior or senior year. And a lot of people, know that Camp Dawson, West Virginia, that's where Delta does their selection. And so this is in the mountains, man, mountains of West Virginia. And they had some National Guard drill sergeants, and they got to practice with us, these high school kids. They were getting warmed up before they went to do their summer drill. But, just another thing that Coach Thornburg introduced us to is some of the guys on the football team that he knew. Our parents weren't wealthy, and we didn't have a shot for college. So he wanted to try to help the guys that he he figured that would go into the military. And man, a bunch of us did. You know, we had some Army dudes, we had some Marine guys, we had some Air Force. I think we might even had a Navy guy. But man, just that solid male role model that just did a ton for us, did a ton for me.
Yeah,
How
I
do you
think
think that
that's
compared to your first squad leader as an young infantry kid?
Yeah, you know, Larry Johnson. I don't know what ever happened to Larry Johnson, but he was a sergeant. Um, so, you know, Fort Ord was my first duty station, Fort Ord, California, and I was part of a experimental Army program they call the cohort.
Mhm.
So we all came in the Army together, and we all went to basic training together, Fort Benning, Georgia. We all went to AIT together, and then we all went to Fort Ord, California together. So the problem with a cohort was, you know, they got a bunch of worker bees, a bunch of privates and PFCs and all that, but they don't have any NCOs. And we're light infantry, by the way. Just want to make sure I state that clearly. We're a light infantry unit. They brought all of these mechanized NCOs from Germany to be our squad leaders and platoon sergeants and all of that. So I had a Sergeant E5, Larry Johnson, that was my squad leader, African American guy, great leader, but he was kind of figuring out the light infantry thing as along with us, you know. So, but he was a hardcore dude, man. He was a hardcore dude, and he was a disciplinarian. And I came into the Army as a private E2, and I was one of his team leaders from the day that I showed up. And you know, I've never been a regular. I can honestly say this, man. I was never just a regular dude. Like I came into the Army as a team leader, and you know, and I rose through the ranks. But yeah, I was a team leader for Larry Johnson. He was a great dude. You know, disciplinarian and a hardcore dude.
you know,
I got my start as a young infantry kid. Campbell was my first duty station. I was in 2nd 187th as a private. Jeff McDonald, my first squad leader, Great American. I looked him up too. It's hard to keep tabs with people from a generation ahead of the internet. You know,
Yeah,
really exciting. Very impactful. You know, he pushed me to do more than my fair share. So he talked me into going to try out for LURS, and I went over to the 101st LURS. I was over there for almost 7 years after that. And I loved
nice.
every day at Campbell was a blessing, man. I had such a
When
great experience.
when were you in the Rakasans? Because we have that in common. I was a 3rd Battalion, 187 Rakasan.
90, first of 97 through the first of 98.
Okay, so I was going through the Q course. I had just left Campbell when you were going through that time period. But dude, that was totally different times.
Yeah.
Totally different times in the Army. Being there, man, for sure.
Yeah.
you know, the funny thing is, I came in '89, just a year before you, and my first job in the Army was a truck driver. Because when I
Nice.
signed up for my little place in North Dakota, the infantry was actually full for like a year. And I wanted nothing more than to get away from that small town, man. So I took the first job. I'm like, I've been driving a truck since I'm like 14. It's not a big deal, right? So
Yeah.
you know, where there was motivation for you guys to be an SF guy and whatever. There was always pushback for me. At my first duty station, my squad leader was Bobby Coleman, who I've actually recently reconnected with also. But I was in a leg truck driving service and maintenance platoon, man. And I saw that recruiting poster. I knew I always wanted to do something like that, man. You know, remember the old Green Beret poster where he's rappelling down the mountain? Is like, not everybody makes it. You know,
Oh yeah.
you know, back when it was hard, you know, back in those days. And so I started training, man. I put my brain to it, and it was like the weight of the world was pushing down. It was like, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. I didn't know what I didn't know, man. I wasn't an infantry guy, right?
Yeah.
So I go to brag, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and just gutted through it. And I went back to Germany, and they're like, I knew you wouldn't make it. Like, no, I'm shipping in 2 weeks. And they're
Deuces.
like, what?
Hey Sean, you
Yeah.
mentioned that poster, and you guys are both of you guys down in Austin, or is it just Sean?
I'm up
You're in
near
Austin.
Dallas. I'm outside of Dallas. I got a
And I'm
small
actually in San
farm there.
Antonio.
Oh, San Antonio. Okay. Sorry, for some reason I thought you were in Austin, Sean. Have you been over to Long Tap Brewery?
Of course.
Yeah.
Dave's a friend.
Oh man, that's so. You mentioned the poster though, and it
Yeah.
instantly took me back to Long Tap Brewery down in San Antonio. Actually, I'll be down there in October, early October. The Special Operations Charitable Trust.
Yep.
They're doing an event down there in early October. I'm going to be down there for 4 days, man. I'd love to connect with you guys.
That would be the Redneck Prom.
What's that?
That's the Redneck Prom you're coming for, I think.
Oh, is that what you guys call it? The Redneck Prom?
Dave
Yeah.
and Kevin's bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I definitely need to clear my schedule to get down for that. It's such a good time.
Yeah.
It is
Great
such a
group of
good event.
guys. Raise a lot of money to do some good things to help the community.
This will be, I think, my 3rd or 4th year running to go to the Redneck Prom over there. But it's just a bunch of good dudes. And Dave and Kevin, shout out to you guys if you ever happen to watch this podcast. The work that you guys do for the Charitable Trust does not go unnoticed by the community for sure. And Long Tab is there's like 375 retired SF dudes in this area down here, and we all have our own little Facebook group and whatever else. But you will always happen across somebody who you can strike up a conversation with a Long Tab, man. It's just a great environment, whether it's coffee or adult beverages. It's Dave has really done that well. The only problem I have ever found with Long Tab is it's not big enough and there's not 2 of them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I hope that business expands to the north side of town, which I've heard rumors and rumblings that may be possible. So I'm looking forward to not driving 30 minutes to get there, but whatever.
Yeah, that would be amazing, man. I'm a big fan of Long Tap Brewery, and I'm excited about getting down there and checking it out and participating in this event. I've never been to the Redneck Prom before, so
That would be fun. And we'll definitely chew the fat down at Long Tap. Just let me know when you're in town.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure will.
And so when we were talking a little bit earlier about mentorship, I think people don't understand how important it is to have a mentor at nearly every stage of your life, whether it's a grade school teacher that you look up to, a male, if there is, those left in the system. And I think I had a male teacher who was, the one who I looked up to my entire career. And then you transition to the Army. So we've always kind of had strong mentorship. And then you, in turn, as a team sergeant on an ODA, obviously were a mentor to others. And so that line of, adult leadership, so to speak, I think that's lacking a lot today. What do y'all think about that?
Oh, I agree. I think I saw somewhere, there were some statistics about a lot of the problems that we're having in our country right now. And a large percentage of that, that problem set is coming from folks that didn't have a dad, or they didn't have 2 parents in the house. So I think you're exactly right, man. I think having that male role model is special, and it's something that's needed. So I couldn't agree more with you, man. I couldn't agree more.
And I think we often, we know how to do that, right? We've had it, we've grown up with it, we've become it, and now I find myself seeking those opportunities out. I have my daughter's a brand new lieutenant in the Army, and so we have now adult conversations. Most of them are like, well, when I was, not those. You just stay away from that, because it's like
you're doing it wrong.
You can see it, man. The eyes roll in the back of their head, and they're like, whatever, it's not that way anymore. I'm like, but some things don't change. Purpose, motivation, and direction, that never changes. Ensure the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. All those NCO things that you internalize into your brain and just roll off of my tongue, even to this day, as a brand new officer who just came from ROTC, that's like foreign to them.
Yeah.
And I said, my best advice to you joining the Army as a brand new 2nd lieutenant is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah, it's good advice.
You're the first platoon sergeant that you come across will be the one who shows you
shapes and molds you. Yeah. That's interesting, man. My son's currently serving. He's in the Army, And he recently was down at Fort Benning for a LURS course, and I think it was a 30-day course, and they were learning all of the surveillance things and hide sites and all that type of stuff, communication, and it was pretty cool, man, because we were able to have a conversation. It was like, hey, man, I've done special reconnaissance for real, and how did you guys do this and do that? And we were kind of talking about some tactics, and they were using like two different areas, and I was like, man, we only use one area because it eliminated a lot of movement and things like that, and we didn't want to get compromised. So I kind of understood what they were teaching, but they were having guys going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was like, man, we didn't do that. We had 6 people out there on the side of a mountain, and the reason why we didn't get compromised, we didn't have that movement. So it was just kind of cool, man, to have a conversation. I think my son, I graduated Ranger School in back in 2000. So I'd been in for 10 years before I went to Ranger School. I was a late Ranger, but it was something that I always wanted to do, man. It was on my list of things I wanted to do. And I actually went as a 18 series guy. I was already a special forces guy when I went through Ranger School. So my son ended up going, I think 20 years later. I think he graduated in 2020.
Oh, wow.
So it's just kind of a neat
Yeah.
thing, man. It's kind of cool, and to have the conversations with my son that we're able to have now, because he's doing some of these things and he's been through some of the training. It's probably a lot like you and your daughter, like, and she's calling you with a leadership issue, and you're just kind of chuckling to yourself, like, "Yep, been through that one,"
Yeah, and I have found that giving advice is kind of a double-edged sword. I try to really just give her guiding principles and let her figure it out for herself, because God forbid I give her advice and it doesn't work, then then my cover's blown, right?
Yeah.
I'm no longer a trusted agent, and so
Yeah.
it's kids are, God, they don't come with a playbook, man. I wish they did, but I think I've found the best that I can do for them is really just to let them bounce on their little butts every now and again. Because if you don't do that, they're not going to learn how to pick themselves up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Try not to be a helicopter.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. My son had a little bit of adversity when he came into the military that I won't get into.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I was at the gym. It was probably, I was in Virginia at this time, working in the DC area. I was in the gym, and it was early, man. It was probably 5 something in the morning, and was trying to get back in shape. And my phone rings, and it's my son, and I'm just like, man, this isn't right. Like, it's 5:15 in the morning. Like he never calls me at 5:15 in the morning.
Right.
And so he shared with me the adversity that he was in the process of going through. And I know that was a tough phone call for him to make, to call dad and say, hey, I kind of had a setback here. And I think it was probably one of my best dad moments, because for whatever reason, dude, I just was, I was on it that day. I was on it that day as a dad. And I knew it wasn't like, oh my God, like what, it wasn't that kind of moment. Like, I could tell that he was heartbroken. He sounded a little defeated. He was down. And I was like, look, bro, this happens to people, man. People make mistakes. This is what happens. I mean, it happens in the military. It happens in the civilian side. The thing that you got to do right now is get back up, get off the ground. You just got knocked down, get back up and get after it. And you're going to recover, and you're going to be fine. I promise you, you're going to be able to work your way out of this. It's going to sting a little bit, and your circumstances are going to be a little different. But I promise you, man, you're going to be able to fight your way out of this. Just get back up and keep going. And that was probably one of my best dad moments. And I like to brag about that one because, in high school, it was me yelling at him. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys are playing beer pong on the effing dining room table. Like I was only gone for like an hour. Like,
How'd you get it
so I
set up
had,
that
How are
fast?
you this drunk?
yeah. Why is there an effing golf cart in our garage that doesn't belong to us? Why? I'm going to go to jail for this, But so I had all of those moments growing up, but I just knew at this particular time that he didn't need to hear that. He needed a little pick me up, and I'm so thankful I was able to provide that for my son.
I think we don't understand um, as parents sometimes, and as former guys, former action guys, whatever, that you can't talk to your kids the way you talk to your pizos, man.
Yeah.
It crushes them, and that one word from a father to a daughter, and especially, but a father to a son is like you can mark them forever, dude. You got to be kind of careful with words or weapons. And I think I am personally not as mindful of that as I should be because, I'm a problem solver, man.
Yeah.
Come to me with a problem, then the knife hand comes out and I'm solving problems. Right? That's not what.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
congratulations for doing right. I can count probably 50 times where I didn't do right.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I'm so proud of that one time, dude. It was like that one time I really brought my A game, dude.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And I think that's part of our own growing too, man. It just you never stop. The minute you stop growing, and you're done.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's all we talk about here is like evolution and change and not being satisfied with where you're at. If you want to be different, you got to grow differently. So, changing your orientation, the adversity like that really lends assistance to empathy later on in life. So when something happens to someone he has the responsibility of being in charge with similar circumstance, now his opportunity to react differently might be different because of some of those early obstacles that he had to negotiate. So those
Yeah.
that's how I see all of that stuff. I'm always super change oriented and growing intentionally in different directions at this point in my life. I love
Yeah.
every day. Yeah,
Trying to get better a little bit every day.
yeah. Habits, healthy habits is something we're kind of stuck on here because a lot of people have unhealthy habits. So we're trying to orient some of our thought processes around like doing things more effectively, more efficiently, to change things about the way you do A, B, or C, to the benefit of you and your surroundings and your family and things of that nature. So.
Yeah.
I had a former commander who I will mention told my XO, "You are the least efficient, most effective person I know."
Ooh,
And I was like,
zinger.
I had to chew on that one for a while, and I'm like, don't they kind of go together, being effective and efficient? And it's like, no, you work way too hard, but you're successful. And it was in spite of yourself, you're successful. I was like, maybe that was me. So I don't know, but one of those things that you take these little things that stick to you, right? Like now, your son, as a result of that engagement, may become a mentor to somebody else. He might
Yeah.
stop and think when somebody does something that's not quite desirable. I can either chew that ass up and crush this person right now, or maybe I'll just grab him by the collar and pick him up and dust him off a little bit and say, look, dude, it's a mistake. And
Yeah.
I think the ability to soldier back from mistakes in the 90s was much different than it is today. It's kind of one shot, one kill these days, at least what I see in the military.
Sure
Zero
is.
defect environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with it's a leadership issue, man. And I don't want to be one of those guys that looks from the outside in because I don't know the circumstances of today, only the memories of the past, right? And the fish stories become bigger every time you tell them. And
Heck
so
yeah.
it's like when it's hard to put yourself in a position now to give advice. The advice I'm given is old, to be honest with
Dated.
you.
Little dated.
Some of it's timeless. I like to think it's timeless, but at the end of the day, it is old. And the dynamics of the people you are leading are different now. And to understand that and be able to embrace it, I think is, I'm learning more from for my kids nowadays, and I think they're learning from me as they, transition to adulthood or their late teens. It's like, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. It's easy now. It's just like click, 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 click. And I'm like, look, man, nothing beats a nose to a nose. I'm just telling you, that is timeless advice. You can text all you want, but it always changes when you're in person. So anyway, communication is different.
For sure, man. For sure.
Communication is different. So Daryl, tell me something about you that not everybody knows.
Something about me that not everybody knows. This might be a little bit interesting. Not a lot of people know this. So when I was in high school, I worked at an amusement park, and that was something that we kind of did. A lot of the football guys, we did that before like our football season started, and it was just a way to kind of keep us out of trouble and keep us from getting drunk and chasing a bunch of girls around. But it was kind of like a program that we worked at this amusement park, and one of the football players, his older brother, managed this amusement park. It was called Cannon Park, and that was in our little hometown in Huntington. So when I was there, so this is late 80s, and I don't know exactly what, 87, 88, whenever. It was late 80s. I do know that. But the older brother that ran the park, he gathered a bunch of the football guys up because, some people worked rides, some people worked the games, all that type of stuff. He gathered up the football guys and said, hey, there's this band that's coming in, this singer guy. He's coming in, and we need some of you guys to watch the equipment. This is really expensive, speakers and all that type of stuff. It's like, okay, cool. So we watched all of that equipment. No one bothered it, and the guy did his performance, and cool. Everything went great. People seemed to enjoy it. And afterwards, we were going back to our games or the rides, and the older brother had these black T-shirts, and he said, hey, you were one of the guys that helped protect the equipment, and the band was very thankful, and they want to give you this T-shirt. And I looked at it, and I was like, I've never even heard of this person. It was a Garth Brooks T-shirt, and it was before Garth Brooks had hit it big. And I just remember looking at this T-shirt, like, I don't even know who this dude is, and just like, I don't want the T-shirt.
Loser.
But yeah, loser. But obviously he went on to have a great career, like a Hall of Fame country singer or whatever.
Yeah.
But the interesting fact is, for me, I think, so I did some security work for Garth Brooks before I even knew, that was, considered security work, and Garth Brooks was a big name. And then while I was in the service, I was able to do counter sniper security support for two presidents, President Bill Clinton in Bosnia, and then President Bush 43 in Kosovo. And that was for President Bush. That was 2001, right before
I was
9/11.
over there during that same time.
Yeah. And what's funny, man, even funnier. So that was kind of like something that not a lot of people would know about me. That it's like, man, I've done security for Garth Brooks, Bill Clinton, and President Bush 43. So recently, so I did the security, the counter sniper security for President Bush 43, 2001 Kosovo. And that was a trip where Condoleezza Rice was there, Don Rumsfeld was there, the First Lady. There was just a bunch of people that came over with him on that trip. Well, you fast forward all these years later, and I had an opportunity to meet President Bush 43. He was at a Texas Rangers game in Arlington, Texas, and we were there with some Medal of Honor recipients. So someone had whispered into his ear, like, hey, the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation staff, which he probably didn't care about, but hey, the staff and some Medal of Honor recipients are here. Would you like to go say hi to them? And he was like, hell yeah. So I got a chance to, I kind of had a private moment with him. I was able to shake his hand, and I said, Mr. President, I just want to let you know, I provided counter sniper security for you all the way back in 2001. I know that you probably don't remember or know who I am. And he goes, no, he goes, I don't know who you are, but I remember that trip. And I was like, yeah, Mr. President, that was a trip. It was you, the First Lady, Condoleezza Rice, Secretary Rumsfeld. And I said, Mr. President, what really worried me about this trip is, and you probably don't remember, but your wife, the First Lady, and she was standing right, right beside him when I said it. I was like, she wore all white. And I remember being out on the perimeter looking back into just a sea of camouflage. Like they had, they gave the president like I think it was an Army PT gray jacket is what he was wearing that day. But it was just a sea of camouflage. And then you saw the First Lady there with just a white, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's making me so nervous. But and he actually did remember that. He goes, I do remember that. I do remember that. So it was a really neat moment that I had with him. It was really cool.
And I told her not to wear that dress, but
Yeah,
everybody got a boss.
yeah.
Wow.
If it hadn't have been for the Army, would there have been any other service that you had interest in joining?
Yeah. Initially, man, I wanted to join the Marines. I found out as a younger guy that no one in my family had ever served in the Marine Corps. So that was something that I kind of had to itch. When I talked about I was always interested in the service. That really fascinated me. It was like, oh man, no one in my entire family, and there was a bunch of uncles and grandparents and all of that had served, and no one had ever served in the Marine Corps. I was like, man, I'm gonna go crush this. I'm gonna go be a Marine, but it just didn't work out for me. Had a bad experience. I love the Marine Corps. I'm not saying anything negative about the Marine Corps. I have tons of respect, man. There's some hard charging dudes and chicks. But just for me personally, I had a bad experience, with a recruiter, and he basically lied to me and said that I was smart. When I should have known that I wasn't. I wanted
Obviously,
to be.
that's why you got infantry, right?
Yeah. I wanted to be, for whatever reason, man, back in the day, I wanted to be an air traffic controller in the Marine Corps. And my dad had said, hey, why don't you do the military and get a skill, and you can do a couple years and you have the military under your belt, and then you got that free college, and boom, boom, boom. So I was like, oh man, that'd be awesome. I'll be an air traffic controller, spend a couple years in the Marines, get out, go to college, and work at an airport the rest of my life. I thought that sounded super, super cool at the time as a young 17 or 18-year-old. But I got up to MEPS and, like all the way there, man, and doing all my medical stuff. And then they told me like, hey man, you don't have the scores to be an air traffic controller, but I'll tell you what you can do. You can sign an open contract and you can go to Paris Island, and then they'll tell you toward the end what you'll be.
I was so infantry, you made it.
Yeah. So that was my bad experience with the Marines. I was able to call my dad, and he said, hey man, get out of there. You don't want to sign an open contract. They could make you a cook and you'd be miserable. And I was like, hell yeah, I would be super miserable being a cook on some Navy ship. But initially I did want to join the Marines, man, and it just didn't work out for me. But I'm glad. I think everything happens for a reason. I'm glad that I was able to join the Army and figure everything out, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's always so cool when you look at your current position and you think back and reflect on everything that led up to yesterday. Gave me the skills and understanding of what I've got to do today. I always thought that was really neat. How everything is very fortuitous and it just kind of happens, and it leads you on this new journey in life. And now with some of these healthy habits, you can kind of like predetermine some of those outcomes with subtle changes throughout your life as well. So it's really interesting how all that stuff fits together so succinctly.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So let's dive into the Medal of Honor Museum. I know that it's not open yet. When I first looked it over, I was like, Arlington, not another museum in Arlington, but it's Arlington, Texas, bro, not Arlington, Virginia. So how did the concept for the museum start? How did you get involved? Walk us through that process, man.
Yeah, actually, I just did a speech on this yesterday. I had a speaking engagement in Dallas at the Military Order of the World Wars, which I didn't even know that was a thing, but they have a chapter. They have the Dallas chapter. And I was able to go there yesterday and speak a little bit about the foundation and what we're trying to do and the progress that we've made. So anytime that we can get the word out, you know, a speaking engagement, a podcast, interview, you know, whatever it might be. I mean, just trying to get that word out so people know. But I think this was a concept that goes back years and years, man. They were trying to pull this off. They were trying to pull this off in South Carolina, and you know, to pull something of this magnitude off, you got to have some cash. You got to have some money, and I believe that was the reason why it just never really progressed. But the thing of it is, man, for whatever reason, there's not a national Medal of Honor museum. Like there's museums for like Dr. Pepper and ice cream and all this other type of things, but there's not a national museum that honors our greatest heroes in our country. So I think that was the genesis. Like, hey, we really need to have a museum like this and celebrate our heroes, celebrate the people that have served in our military, served our country at the highest levels. And then also we want to share those values that are inherent in the Medal of Honor recipients. And we talk about these a lot. There's 6 values: courage, sacrifice, commitment, integrity, citizenship, patriotism. So that's something that's really needed in our country. But so this concept's been out there for years and years. They did a nationwide search for a destination. Like, hey, where can we build this museum? They looked at the biggest cities across the country. They looked at Washington, D.C. They looked at Boston. I mean, just all across the country. They looked at these cities. And obviously they had to rule out some, because if you're trying to build a museum in DC, it takes 10, 20 years sometimes. And then another thing about trying to do a museum in DC, if you're a, you know, revenue generating for profit museum, if you're in DC, you're competing with the top free museums in our country, you know, all the Smithsonians and things like that. So
Right.
it is super hard, man, to be competitive in DC when, you know, you can walk a block away and go right into a free museum. So this nationwide search, I think it was 20 cities, it narrowed down to 2, and it was Arlington, Texas, and Denver, Colorado. And they were both really close. Denver brought in Peyton Manning to kind of push it over the finish line, and Arlington, Texas had a lot of supporters, and they had the Jones family, you know, from the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, Charlotte Jones, and all the great folks from Arlington, and just this patriotic part of the country. Arlington, Texas was selected over Denver. And I think a lot of it too is like, I mean, just we have a perfect location, dude. I mean, we're right beside Dallas Love Field, or, you know, adjacent to Dallas Love Field, Dallas Fort Worth, the Dallas Fort Worth metropolitan area. It's like one of the top 5 in the country. Millions of people. Texas is the 2nd state in the country that's over 30 million. You know, just, you know, obviously behind California, but Texas just hit over 30 million people in the state. So, you know, that's a big part of it too, is having that access. And then we're adjacent to, you know, AT&T Stadium, where the Dallas Cowboys play. We're adjacent to Globe Life Field, where the Texas Rangers play. Sadly enough, I just got humbled at that game last night with the Houston Astros versus the Rangers. Their leadoff hitter hit 3 effing home runs in a row. Like the leadoff hitter, 3 home runs, like back to back to back. It's like, oh my God. Needless to say, my wife and I left after about the 3rd inning. Place was place was like overrun with Houston Astros fans, and they were like feeling it, dude, because they're winning like 10-1 or something.
I saw the game. It was terrible.
Oh yeah, man, it was
Seattle,
terrible.
Texas, and Houston all right there, balled up at the
Right
top.
there, man. Yeah. So
Whoever
sorry.
loses out of that, yeah, I mean, I could go
Yeah,
down
sorry.
a whole side tangent on sports.
Yeah, sorry, I digressed with sports, but getting back to the location, just a great location. Man, dude, in this area, in December for high school football state championship, they play at AT&T. It's over 200,000 people come here in December to watch high school football. So we have a great location, and we love to say that, Arlington, Texas is the American dream city. We're right beside America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, and we like to call ourselves, hey, yes, we're the National Medal of Honor Museum, but we're America's museum. Like, this museum is for Americans. And like we were talking about a little bit before we went live today, this is a bipartisan issue. It's not a Republican or a Democrat or an independent thing. It's an American thing. This transcends politics. And we're really, really proud of that and love the location. So for my involvement, I was actually, I just relocated to the area from DC. I was working as a security consultant for a firm, Thornton Tomasetti. And it was in that capacity. I just relocated to Dallas because they have Thornton Tomasetti has a Dallas office. So I was able to relocate to Texas. And while I was doing that job, came across Chris Cassidy, who's our president and CEO, and I'll circle back on Chris here in a second. But in the capacity of my former job as a consultant, I met Chris, and and this kind of leads back to that podcast. So let's not forget that, because the Chris Cassidy, like this all leads in. But so I met Chris Cassidy, and I had my notebook because my first post-military job was at the Museum of the Bible, which is very crazy, I know. And I'm sure you guys have probably a ton of questions about, why would a Special Forces Green Beret that retired out of Fort Bragg end up in Washington, D.C., nation's capital, working at a flippin' museum? It's an interesting one. But I had all of this experience. I was at the Museum of the Bible during construction phase, grand opening, $550 million museum, 430,000 square foot museum. So, I had all that experience, and I met Chris, and I said, hey man, I'm not trying to pitch you on security consulting or operation consulting or anything like that. I just want to share some lessons learned with you. Like, I'm such a firm believer in what you're doing here. I'm so proud that this museum is going to be in Arlington, Texas. I just want it to be successful. And here's some things that I ran into as a director of security and a director of ops at the Museum of the Bible. Here's some things to avoid. Here's some things that we did right. And I just went down the list with him, man. And I was just sharing some lessons learned. And evidently everything that I was talking about resonated. And it was problems that he was dealing with at the time. So we had a great conversation, and then he led me out of the building that they were in at the time. And I was getting ready to do a speaking engagement at the Texas Rangers. I was part of the governor of Texas had what was it called? It was like a commission on concert safety. It was after that whole Houston incident, Texas Task Force on Concert Safety, something like that. But we had done a lot of work for that, and I was getting ready to give a presentation over at the Texas Rangers for that. And Chris had asked me, like, hey, if we had something available, would you be interested? And I was like, heck yeah, man. Heck yeah, I definitely would. And that just one thing led to another. And then he offered me the position, and I accepted right away. And, I've been working at the foundation since February of last year. So I'm about a year and a half. And Just an honor and a privilege to work here. So real quick, man, I have to tell this story because I think it's funny. So the reason, and Chris, let's talk about Chris real quick. Let's talk about Chris Cassidy, classic underachiever. He's a Naval Academy grad. So he graduated from Annapolis, former Navy SEAL. I think he spent 11 years as a Navy SEAL, was in Afghanistan right after the 9/11 attacks. Was an MIT grad, which, you know, I guess that's what people do when they're bored. They go to MIT.
Yeah, no
And
big-
then he was a NASA astronaut for 17 years. He was the chief NASA astronaut. I think combined, he spent like a year in space. I mean, dude's just got a crazy background. But that's how I ended up getting on the first podcast, because I know someone that knows Ryan Fugit. They went to college together. They served together, because Ryan Fugit is a former Apache helicopter pilot and a CIA guy. So I knew someone that had went to school with Ryan and served with Ryan. So I reached out to that guy and I said, "Hey man, I'd like to get on with Ryan Fugit and chat with him." So I got hooked up with Ryan, and it was for the sole purpose, because I saw how popular Combat Story was. And when I got Ryan on the phone, I said, "Hey man, I want to tell you about our CEO and president, Chris Cassidy. You know, Navy SEAL, NASA astronaut, and he'd be a great guy to be on Combat Story, and it would really help the foundation because, you know, you can listen to his war stories and talk about him wearing spacesuits and, you know, eating space ice cream, and then we talk about the foundation, you know." So that was my pitch to Ryan, and he said, "Yeah, that's cool, but I'd really like to get you on the show." And I was like, "What?" You know, I've never done a podcast before. I'm the like classic introvert, dude, classic introvert, and just perfect being the gray man, kind of in the back of the room, not saying anything. And I was like, "No, man, there's no way." And he goes, "No, no, no. I've heard your name. I know who you are." And I think it was like his third episode. He said someone on the third episode mentioned your name. And it was like one of those things like, if you had to go into combat right now with one person, who would it be? And they said my name for whatever reason. They must have been crazy. I don't know. But the guy was like, "Hey, I would want Darylette with me. That's who I'd want." So he had heard all these stories, and he goes, "I'd love to have you on the show." And I said, "Ryan, I barely have time to talk to my wife about some stuff. Like, are you sure?" Like, but he said, "Man, I'd love to have you." And I grew a spine and said, "Okay, let's do it." And so that's how I ended up starting this whole journey. And here I am with you fellas today, because if it wouldn't have been for that, I would have just totally waved off on podcasts and doing these type of things, because it's just not my nature. I'm definitely outside my comfort zone. I'm getting way more comfortable with it now. But in the beginning, man, it was a little weird for me.
You know, the funny part about it is I don't think any of us are comfortable doing this. But at the end of the day, I guess a lobster never grows unless it sheds its shell and finds something new. And so this is part of that habit chain for us too. I'm not a podcast guy.
Yeah.
My mom always told me I had more of a radio face. So it's one of those things where I think people need to hear a lot of the things that we have to say, to tell you the truth. And I think if it helps other people to kind of come out of their shell and talk about some of their issues or whatever the case might be, to help reunite the tribe, that's really kind of what we're trying to do here. I think so many of us become, for whatever reason, isolated after the fact when we get out. I know you got out in 17, as did I, and look back at that now, and it's like we talked about mentorship earlier, and always having a tribe and a coach and a team. When you leave, man, you don't have that anymore, and so you naturally, I think we're kind of all the same. You go try to find the other tribe, whether it's a new job, whether it's a Medal of Honor museum, and you want to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. And so I think a lot of us spend a lot of our time in search of that tribe. And kind of what we're trying to do is give you a place to come when you're part of the tribe.
Yeah, I
That's
couldn't
the whole tribe.
agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I agree wholeheartedly, and I think it's so important. Um, it's so important for people to hear some of these. I mean, you could probably extract a ton of lessons learned when you're on some of these different podcasts and people are talking about their stories. And I feel, I'm proud that I've actually been able to encourage some other Green Berets, and I'll say one in particular. Ryan Neal is a guy that I served with in 10th group, as he was the senior 18 Delta. He was senior medic on his team. Their compound got hit with a flippin' V-bid, dude, like a V-bid truck, and got blown up.
That was
And
2010.
I'm not for sure of the no. I think it was way before then. It was way before then. It was to crit Iraq. I think it was maybe 2004, 2005 is when his team got hit. But man, there's just so many things that you can pull from that, because Ryan was, he was the 18 Delta, and he's trapped in his room, and the place is on fire. So they finally were able to get him out of there, and he was able to treat folks, and thank God, man, no one got killed from our side. On the SF side, I think maybe one or two of their guards got killed. But yeah, man, just, I mean, to hear some of those stories, like that's not captured anywhere, dude. Like you have to talk to someone to hear some of these stories, and I think that's so valuable. And what you said about the tribe, I think is so true. I mean, I'm not a guy that goes to the American Legion or the VFW, and I'm not saying anything negative about either one, but I just, that's not me. Like I've never done that. So to be able to connect with some folks like you all, I mean, this is really important. And I think it's important for the next generation to hear. Like I said earlier, I grew up reading books. Like, we're dealing with a generation, they listen a lot more than read. I'm sure, some of them still do read, but they listen a lot to these podcasts. So I think it's really making a huge impact, and it's so important because it captures a lot of these conversations, and it's something that I see right now at the National Medal of Honor Museum. We've had 3,517 Medal of Honor recipients since the Medal of Honor started, all the way back in 1861 with Abraham Lincoln. And we have 66 as of yesterday, because we had a ceremony yesterday for Captain Larry Taylor, Vietnam Cobra helicopter pilot. So yeah, so we have 66 living Medal of Honor recipients. That's it. And once they pass, that's it. So to be able to capture some of those stories, like what we're doing, we're going to have like the hologram, like what we call virtual recipients. So we'll be able to capture some of those. Our team just did Melvin Morris, MACV SOG Special Forces. Actually, you can see his beer can right there. That's Melvin Morris, and that's from Long Tap Brewery.
Long Tap Brewing, yep.
Yeah. They got on there. They got the quarterback. They got him left-handed. He's throwing all those grenades back at the enemy. But they asked Melvin over 700 some questions over a period of several days. So we'll have that for generations of Americans to be able to talk to a Vietnam Medal of Honor recipient, MACV SOG Special Forces. Generations of Americans will be able to hear his story and to be able to ask him all of these different types of questions. So I think that's super cool. And that's why I think it's so powerful what you guys are doing, because decades from now, people are going to be able to go back and listen to some of these podcasts and be like, oh man, I know exactly what those guys were talking about. It's important.
I didn't at the time, but now that I'm listening to this 20 years down the road, I got it. Now, storytelling is a huge component of like archiving information. Lessons learned, like you said, is huge. And some of these like incidental stories that come out of these just anecdotal conversations help share disposition, I guess might be the best word, of the after the fact. We can sit here and talk about how we are thankful for the opportunities to have gone through some of those challenging moments and found productive ways to process some of those more complex trains of thought that come from those terse situations that we found ourselves with overseas. That's not always the easiest situation, and there's countless numbers of other veterans who haven't figured out how to uh, have that productive way of seeing their way out of some of those challenging thought processes. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredibly important, man.
Yeah.
Incredibly important.
And I think that's kind of what we're about too, is the storytelling piece. We're aspiring to put some of those stories in game format to become a playable mini documentary, and we'll talk a little bit offline about how we can incorporate some of the material that you guys are doing. Really, it's just the ability to watch a story inside of a game. Some of the stuff we're building now, I think, is going to relate for a lot of people who are out there. And so there's opportunities there to get the word out about the museum. There's opportunities to tell the stories. And I think, God bless Jocko Willink out there. If you never watched Jocko Willink's podcast, please go do it. Phenomenal series with some of the SOG guys on there. And I sat for hours on one weekend just watching John Stryker Meyer talk about being a 1-1 or 1-0 in his time in SOG, and some of the other guys. It's really.
Would you like to be connected with Tilt?
We are indirectly, but yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And
yeah.
So I know he has a lot of demands on his time.
Yeah. I'm connected with Tilt. He actually came down to Texas and he was doing some podcasts, and I was lucky enough to get introduced to him and was able to have lunch with him in Arlington and took him over to the construction site and gave him a tour, and we exchange messages time to time. We're connected on Instagram. He's out there, dude. Like I just now I've had LinkedIn for a couple of years. Excuse me. I've had LinkedIn for a couple of years. And that was the first social media that I ever did. And that was as a consultant, because my boss was like, hey, dude, like, you're going to be doing business development. We need you to bring revenue in. So that's cool that you used to be a Special Forces Green Beret. Like, that's super cool. And you had no social media. Wow, that's really cool. But you need to get your ass on LinkedIn. So bring some revenue. So I got on LinkedIn for that reason. And then just recently, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of that type of stuff too. So, but it's funny seeing Tilt on there, man. And then all the guys that he's connected with, is Jocko and Sean Ryan and all the Black Rifle Coffee dudes. But I'd be happy to try to get you introduced to Tilt, man. He's such a great American, and hopefully he'll be down in San Antonio in early October as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be really cool.
Through another friend of friends here, and we got about 3 minutes, so we do a hard break. But a fellow named Rob Graham, who actually does SOG Prairie Fire. That's another game out there on the streets. Actually, a really good game. But in conversations with Rob Graham, he's like, "Yeah, you can jump on Sunday and play with Ken and me." I said, "Ken, who's Ken?" He's like, "Ken Bora." I'm like, "You mean the former Yusuf Commander Ken Bora plays SOG Prairie Fire with you on Sundays?" He's like, "Yeah, we're good."
Oh, wow.
I'm like, wow. So the guys that we served under during our time, et cetera, who you never really knew the history of. Well, then you start, researching about, well, what did Ken do in SOG? Sir, if you're listening out there, sorry to be informal. But honestly, there's so many stories. And here, I'll give you one quick one. So I was recently up in Montana and got to visit the first Special Services Museum up there in Helena, Montana. And they had replica models of the B-42 Dagger, which I gloriously received in the mail yesterday, made now by Boker, not Case. But in it was, pamphlets and stickers and the entire history of the blade and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, dude, that is.
I got to get me one of those, man. If you can tell me how you got that, I'd love to get one. I'd love to get one.
Absolutely do it. it's such a great reproduction. And as we take a break here, I'll go downstairs and grab it because I just got to show it on there, man. I love it. It's
Yeah.
I'm a knife geek, so at the end of the day, when you can have to me, a piece of SF history from, our roots and our beginnings, even if it's a replica, it doesn't matter to me. It's a good blade, and I'll show it here in just a little bit. But I think we've got about 30 seconds till we take a hard break. So we'll go take a pause for the cause. We'll show you a video from one of our partners, Spartan Blades, in fact, and we'll be back here in probably about 3 minutes or so. So thanks for tuning in to VetCast today. Second hour coming up with Mr. Daryl Utt from the Medal of Honor Museum. We'll learn a little bit more about the mission of the museum, and we'll ask Daryl a few more questions about some of his favorites when we come back in 3 minutes.
Mark and I have both been in the infantry in the Army. I had been in the Marines prior to that. We both ended up in a unit called 1st Special Forces Group.
I was a sniper in the infantry, been a sniper in Special Forces, and did a full career in different types of teams, mountain team, air ops team, counterterrorism team. I met Curtis actually at Fort Lewis when he was running a sniper locker, and then we were on a team together in Okinawa. We've been friends, and we've always talked about going into business and life after the Army.
We got out, went to work in the civilian world, and realized a lot of what we did in the military translated to business. We looked at the cutlery industry, and the people there as a culture were fantastic. And we said, hey, we're going to start a knife company here in North Carolina.
In the beginning, we had a knife grinder, a blaster, some rudimentary tools. We started out and decided, what do we want to make? Well, let's make something we know. So it was a combat knife, and we did 3 models because we figured you got to have more than one when you start out.
You think you know everything about knife because you carried one all your life. But to be quite honest, we were new at it. We didn't know everything, so we took them to a lot of our Special Forces buddies at Fort Bragg that gave us some advice and allowed us to develop those initial products. Today, we have a whole lot more offerings than we did in those early days. We actually have 3 distinct lines of knives we call gold, silver, and bronze. Gold being the knives we make right here in our shop in North Carolina. The silver line knives are those made for us by our partners up in Olean, New York at K-Bar. And our bronze line are knives we design using US-made steel that are manufactured overseas. A lot of folks think we have a giant manufacturing facility with 100 people. And quite honestly, we have 10 core people that we use to build our knives.
Making a knife isn't as simple as most people think. There are many processes that are involved, so we have checks and balances and continuous quality control throughout the processes. We know that perfection should not get in the way of getting your job done. So while we strive for perfection, we know we'll never achieve it.
I'll never forget the first time we won a Blade Show award because of the rest of the industry, the people who do what we do, saying, hey, you guys have this figured out. We realize that quality, it's not just the time we put into making the knives, it's not just the high-end materials or processes or even the money we spend, our raw cost to make those knives. In the end, the quality is proven out by the people that hold them and use them, right? If someone's willing to pay for it, and they're willing to carry it, and they're happy to carry it, they might even brag about it. To us, that's the measure of quality. We don't chase trends. We don't put things on knives that don't need to be there. We always joke, and I know this sounds ultra simplistic, sharp, pointy, with a comfortable handle. You do those 3 things, you're probably going to be successful in knife making. And I think if you can take a look at a knife, it's very, very simple, but you can immediately say, I know who designed that, or I know who made it. To me, that's a measure of success. That's what we try to do here at Spartan Blades.
Both Curtis and I care about our country. We fought for it. We took our oath seriously and still do to this day. So since our product goes to end users who use it in the most ultimate fight, we take it seriously, what we make. That when it goes in a box and it gets sent to a customer, that it's ready to go wherever you need to go. And it's going to be there and perform. And that's what we strive for every day.
All right, welcome back to Vet Connect. We're on today with Mr. Daryl Utt from the Medal of Honor Museum. Prior to our little pause for the cause there, and you viewing that wonderful Spartan Blade video, we were talking about one of my recent acquisitions, a replica V42 dagger. As a reminder, if you do order a Spartan blade, we have unlockable content in the game, so you can actually play in our game with the knife that you purchased from Spartan Blade via coupon code. So if you're in the market for a great blade, go to SpartanBlades.com and order one of the Defenses or one of the Spartan Harzy daggers or one of the Ares models, and you can play with them in the game. So, as previously mentioned, here is that wonderful bean footage. And so,
man, that's nice.
That thing is, I mean, razor sharp. It's actually made by Boker, so it's a great quality blade. Has a serial number on it. Is authentic in all shapes, sizes, right down to the skull crusher pommel on the end. And if you're a geek of SF history and of knives in particular, you'll understand how important this thing actually was. And it actually comes with a really cool leather sheath. And you're going to say, why is that thing so long? Well, the history behind that thing is when it was made for the troops that it was made for, they extended it to fall below the white overcoats that the guys were actually wearing at the time that they invaded Italy. They had to have quick access to it. But even down to, where the middle bits are on the on the scabbard itself were lessons learned, because they jumped with it and the knife was so sharp on the end, it ended up jabbing a whole bunch of legs. So they reinforced it and they put metal on it. And it's just the history that comes along with this blade when you order it from the museum in Helena is really, really interesting in and of itself. But I'll pass along the order and information to you, Daryl. And again, man, it's just a beauty. I love it to death.
Yeah, I got to get me one of those, dude.
Second only to the Spartan blades that I own.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how we are with knives and geeky stuff. So as we're talking about the Medal of Honor Museum today, I know you kind of walked us through sort of the beginnings of it and the characters involved with it. We're not complete yet, right? We've broken ground, but we're due to open in 2025. Is that right?
Yeah, we broke ground March of 2022, and we are set to open March 25th of 2025, which will be Medal of Honor Day. So it's going to be really special. We still got a ways to go. We're making a lot of great progress. I mean, just in the year and a half, it's amazing because, we started out with the groundbreaking, a shovel in the dirt, and the progress that's been made is just amazing. So, we're setting on 5 acres of waterfront property in Arlington, Texas, as I mentioned earlier, adjacent to Globe Life Field and AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play, and Choctaw Stadium, of course, as well. And that whole area right there, they're turning it into a destination place. They're getting ready to open up an 888-room hotel called Ocho, brand new convention center with tens of thousands of square feet for meeting space and functions. So we're 5 acres, waterfront property. We're going to have about 100,000 square feet of space. It's built in that we'll have event space, and we're going to have a theater, 300 plus seats, theater. So that's going to be nice. We'll have meeting rooms, board rooms, place to do weddings. The steel box, the site, if you've seen any pictures, actually, you can see the picture that's behind me is actually of the entrance. It's an older image, but, it has the appearance of it's a floating building. It's a 200 by 200 box, 40,000 square foot steel box. So you got about an acre that's suspended up in the air, 40 some feet by these 5 mega columns. And the steel is, there's symbology there with the project. The steel, forged in fire, represents the Medal of Honor recipients that were forged in combat. The weight of the steel, it's heavy, just like the burden for the Medal of Honor recipients to wear that Medal of Honor and still serve their country, even though they're not, serving active duty anymore. We still have a couple left actually doing that, but most of them, there's still that burden, that heavy burden that they have to carry and represent because, I've heard one of our recipients say like, hey, there's been 40 million plus that have served their country since the Civil War. And one of our recipients is like, hey, this Medal of Honor that I wear around my neck, I wear this for the 40 million people that have served this country. Like, this isn't just my medal. It represents all of us, which I thought was so powerful. And then going back to those 5 mega columns that, puts that steel box like it's floating. The 5 mega columns represents each of the branches of service that have a Medal of Honor recipient from that branch. So obviously tracking that we have 6 branches now with Space Force as the 6th as of a couple of years ago. But, obviously Space Force, they don't have a Medal of Honor recipient. So we have the 5 branches represented with the 5 mega columns. I think there's great symbology there. We're going to have an oculus in the center of the box, which is, a hole. And then we're going to have these giant space cannons that'll shine a light straight up. It's going to be so powerful. So that's what we're using to represent our 6th branch of service. The Space Force is kind of like that light, that beacon. So if you think about like maybe some of those Sunday night football games or a Monday night football game, and you're watching the Cowboys, play another team, they typically, they have the Goodyear blimp or whatever it is.
Right.
They show tons of images of Dallas,
Yeah.
And it's like, man, we're in Arlington, dude. We're in Arlington.
That is a destination location. That's going to be a great place to do business for decades to come. You couldn't have asked for a more pristine environment for that location. Excellent choice.
Yeah, definitely. I can't take credit for that, man, because that was before my time. But if this was like a private thing, I'd maybe say that was my call that we chose Arlington. I'm kidding. But those space cannons, it's going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be a gorgeous picture shot at night from the blimp. An actual image of Arlington, of the museum with the space cannons. So I think that's going to be really cool. But we talked to. Or we were going to talk a little bit about the stories, and obviously, with 3,517 recipients, it's hard to cover all of those stories. So I'm an operations guy, so I don't want to get too twisted into this because we have professionals, PhDs, exhibit content experts that deal with this. But we're not going to be a chronological museum. We're going to be a biography museum. So you're not going to come into the museum and you're going to start the Civil War and you're going to walk around and you're eventually going to get to World War II and keep going, and then you're going to end your journey at Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, we're not going to be chronological like that. It's going to be biography. It's going to be the stories, and these are going to be some really, really powerful stories. And we've had a really dedicated, smart group of advisors that have helped us pick which stories to tell from the recipients, and we're going to have to rotate them so we can try to get everybody involved, which we'll have to work out that schedule later. But because we're only dealing with, it's actually a little bit less than 40,000 square foot once they start building all the walls and things like that. So we actually have about 31,000 square foot once everything's said and done to tell these stories. And we're telling stories of ordinary Americans that have done extraordinary things, probably on the worst day of their life. And as you guys know, with conflict and combat and things like that, imagine all of the things that have changed when you start looking at the Civil War, tactics, equipment, all of those things from the Civil War all the way up to GWAT, and what guys are carrying in Afghanistan or were carrying in Afghanistan and Iraq, and tactics and weapons and all of those type of things. So all of that stuff has changed, but the one thing that has stayed the same are those values that our guys and one gal, there is one female Medal of Honor recipient, but the values that have stayed the same from the Civil War all the way to now. And that's what I mentioned earlier with those 6 values: the courage, sacrifice, commitment, integrity, citizenship, patriotism. Those are the things that have remained. So we really want to tell those type of stories, and we want people to know, like, hey, you don't have to be a soldier, a rifleman, and you're fighting Al Qaeda to do something heroic. You know, you can do this as well. You can stop that bully on the schoolyard. You know, you can care for your mom who has cancer and sit with her, and you can do these type of things, and that's very heroic. It's not about carrying a rifle, but how can you find um, the ability to be a hero in your life, be a mentor like we were talking about earlier, or showing somebody like, hey, these are some things that help me with PTS and TBI and to kind of get me out of that rut. There's some really heroic things that I think from these stories that people will be able to glean, these lessons learned. And I'll mention one, probably one of my, well, I can't say that I have a favorite Medal of Honor recipient,
That was
but
coming.
you can see over my
That was
shoulder here, I got 2 books right here on Roy Benavidez, um, Tango Mike, what they called him. Roy, I mean, the book is not like a lie, like legend, Special Forces legend. But the story, like, if the more that you learn about Roy Benavidez, and Texas guy, but he was
Humble as can be.
humble.
Humble as can be. Yep.
The way that he was raised, orphan, discriminated against, had a hard upbringing, had a hard time in school, and to rise to where he ended up. And actually, before he even went Special Forces, he had such a major serious injury in Vietnam. It was like, dude, you're never going to be able to walk again. Like, this is before he went Special Forces. It was
Yeah.
like, hey, dude, you're not going to be able to walk again. Like, sorry about that. But he was able to fight through all of that and rehab and get better. And he wanted to be a Green Beret, and the love that this man had for his country. And if you really wanted to be fair and kind of look at the way he was born and raised and came up in Texas, you could maybe see, like, maybe he doesn't love his country as much. I mean, but this man just loved his country, and it's so inspiring, the things that he was able to do. Once he healed up, he went through Special Forces training. And then, of course, if you read about his action, what he done that day, I mean, holy cow. I mean, the dude was shot, stabbed, blown up, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, this dude went through everything. And his story is just, I mean, it's legendary. But I really think there's a lot that you can glean from that. And here's another important thing that I believe it's lost on a lot of people. Like, these stories, it's really important, the action, what they did to receive the Medal of Honor. But if you look at guys like Roy Benavidez, what he did with the medal after he earned it, all of those visits to these school kids, and you're telling these kids stories and inspiring them and telling them, the love that he had for our country and how much of a great opportunity it was for him to be born into America. I mean, all of these things, these speeches, I still see his speeches and it makes my heart warm. I see some of his speeches going around on social media. And I mean, this man did a lot of things after he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Woody Williams, he was a flamethrower on Iwo Jima. We just lost Woody, unfortunately, not that long ago. And, West Virginia guy. But what he was able to do after he earned the Medal of Honor, I mean, with Gold Star families, I mean, just legendary service after the award. So I think that's super, super important. And I really think when people go through the museum, they have their families with them, the kids, and I mean, I think we can all agree that there's some concerns that kids nowadays aren't getting the values. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of kids don't know enough about their country. General Pat Brady, Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam era, San Antonio guy. I steal some of his quotes all the time because he's just that good. Like, he's such a good speaker, and he has a lot of good quotes that he says. But it's like, it's hard to love this country if you don't know this country. And it's like, man, I mean, what do you say to something like that? Like, if you don't know the country, it's really hard to love the country. So it's interesting to me as well is to hear the Medal of Honor recipients when they talk about the National Medal of Honor Museum and what it means. They want this to be an education center. Like, we want to educate people and let everyone know how great this country is, and the people that have fought for it and sacrificed everything. And to steal one other story, and I'll shut my mouth for a little bit and give you guys
No,
opportunity to speak. But General Brady tells a story about a fellow recipient that he actually saved. And I want to do it justice. So let me see if I can find this gentleman's name, because I want to just do it justice. But General Brady flew in and saved this individual. Let's see. I want to make sure I get his name right.
Another recipient.
Yeah, it's another recipient. It was Sergeant First Class Webster Anderson, Vietnam. So General Brady flew in Vietnam in his Huey, and he rescued Webster Anderson, and they both got the Medal of Honor. They both received the Medal of Honor. Webster had lost both of his legs and one of his arms. So he was a triple amputee. Webster Anderson was a triple amputee. General Brady flew in and got him when it was like, he shouldn't even have been flying that night, and because of all the battle and all those type of things. But he went in and he saved Webster. And General Brady tells a story that they were like at a 5th grade class in Oklahoma somewhere, and he's there with Webster, because Webster, triple amputee, actually lived, right, survived, and him and General Brady are going to schools and things like that. And I wish I could do this story justice, but I'm going to do the best I can. So General Brady, they're up there, they're talking to this class, and he says, this one little boy or girl raises his or her hand and says, "Hey, Mr. Anderson, knowing everything that you know now, losing your legs and losing your arm, being a triple amputee, knowing everything that you know now, if you could go back and do it again, would you do it?" And Webster Anderson says, "Hey, yes, I would. I only have one arm left, but if my country wants it, they can have it anytime they want." And he says, man, you could hear a pin drop when he made that statement. Like, I only have one arm left, but anytime my country wants it, they can have it. And that, man, that hits you in the heart. That's just a powerful, powerful story. And I'm fortunate enough. I mentioned this yesterday. I said that I did a little speaking engagement at the Military Order of World Wars. And I mentioned that I served 26 and a half years in the Army, and I was only ever around one Medal of Honor recipient, and that was it was a good one. It was a good one. Mac V. Sog, legend, another legend, Bob Howard, who should probably, arguably, maybe had 2 or 3 medals of honor. But Bob Howard was at like maybe a function or a military special forces ball or something like that in Germany. He was the only Medal of Honor recipient that I was ever around in 26 and a half years. Like, it's not very common. I mean, there's only so many of those guys. And when we were there with Bob, the chain of command was like, don't look at him, don't talk to him, don't ask him for anything. Like, just leave that man alone. But he was still an intimidating dude, man. He probably was in his high 60s, low 70s when he was with us in Stuttgart. Like, that dude was still like, that dude looked like
he's a
he could
meat
still
eater.
ball you up, man. He
Yeah,
could
that's
ball
amazing.
you up. But when I was at my speaking engagement yesterday, Sal Gwenta was there, Afghanistan Medal of Honor recipient, and it's just like, man, it's a privilege for me to be able to spend some time with the recipients, Cal Carpenter and Pat Payne, and I mean, just there's so many of the different recipients that we get to spend time with, and I think it's so important. And I know the impact that they have on me, as someone that served. And I just think it's something that our country really needs right now. And hopefully it's a way that we can bring people together. We have a lot of decisiveness and it's very polarizing right now, but something that can unite Americans and bring people together that transcends politics. Like I said, not a Republican thing, not a Democrat, not an independent thing, but an American thing. And I think our country really needs that. And I think we're going to be super successful. We're going to have tons of people that are going to visit, and to be able to spend some time with recipients, whether it's a hologram or it's one of the actual recipients that'll be there in the museum. I just think it's going to be really special, man.
And I think in the information age like it is now, there's so many ways to access that information, but you don't have really, it's not the same as being there. It becomes hallowed ground.
That was one of my thoughts,
I
was
have
like,
two
if you could
great
speak
friends buried
to
in Arlington, Texas,
the
teammates
benefits
of
and
mine,
also the burdens
lost in the
that
past, etc.
come with
There's a certain
position that you're
reverence
in,
that
hearing
comes with
from
a cemetery, right?
It seems like both of you guys, I'm getting both of you guys talking right now.
I don't have
missing
Sean
something on
shared
this
on my
side.
screen, so maybe my internet.
Can you hear me
is
now?
goofy.
Is that better?
I live out in remote Texas, so
Yeah, just that little clip there, that past little clip, it was both of you guys talking. I couldn't really understand. Sorry.
no
Okay, I can't hear Lucas on
Go
the
ahead,
other
Sean.
end. I'll start again. And so I think it was my point here is that the Medal of Honor Museum that you guys are opening up, I think, is really going to be almost like hallowed ground to so many. The ability to to visit in person and talk in person with a recipient of the medal, and then to understand the stories of others. There's just never going to be enough time. It's like when you order this, or when you go to the Smithsonian, right? That exhibit rotates over time, and you can go back 100 times and never see the same thing. And I think that's kind of what you guys are going for also, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're going to be able to rotate. We're going to try to get as many of the virtual recipients, those holograms, as we can, because, like I said earlier, once they pass away, they're gone. But to be able to have those stories and keep those stories, I think is super important. So yeah, man, we're really excited about it.
So tell me about how that technology is going to work with the holograms.
Have you ever been to like a Holocaust museum?
Mm-hmm, of course. Scary.
Yeah, they have. It's similar technology. Because same thing with the Medal of Honor recipients. We don't have a lot of Holocaust survivors that are left with us. So they record, like in the case of the Holocaust museums, they record the survivors and they ask them a series of questions like, how old were you? Where were you? What's your favorite food? Were you abused? I mean, just hundreds of questions over several days. And then they use the AI and they use all of that technology. So then when they actually get everything all set up, and it's like a hologram. So it's like you're talking to this person that looks like a Holocaust survivor, or that, whoever that is. And then let's just say you're a fourth grade class and people are, hey, what was your favorite ice cream? How old were you in Germany? Like all of those questions have been rehearsed and or not rehearsed, but they've been recorded and they've gathered them up so they can actually speak back and say, hey, my favorite ice cream is chocolate, or I
Wow.
was 15 years old when this whole thing started, and I spent 3 years in a camp. I mean, they have the technology to where you can actually have a conversation back and forth. It's pretty amazing stuff, actually.
So you're talking about an AI integrated hologram that you can interact with, right?
Yes, that's it.
Wow, that's great tech. I think that finally, you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing.
and when you, I think, some of the younger generation, and I may be going on a limb here, but visiting museums has kind of been one of those field trip things. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we get away from school, but it's more about messing around with my friends over here on the side. I don't think this is like that. This is one of those very interesting, because it's like, where else can you do that, right?
Yeah, for sure, for
Very
sure.
cutting edge. That's
Yeah.
going to be awesome. I can't wait to actually go visit myself.
Yeah, I'm excited to go
Honestly.
check it out.
Well, I would like to invite both of you guys right now. If you ever have time, and if you're ever in Arlington, Texas, I would love to invite you guys. You have an open invite. You can come over and check out the construction site, and I'll walk you through it, and we could talk about the different components and all of those type of things. But it's just an amazing tour. A lot of people get a lot of things out of it. I think this is an interesting story. I'd like to tell this one real quick. We did a tour on a Sunday, and it was a guy that was flying in. He was a pilot, and somehow he got connected with me. So he was a pilot that was a former Air Force guy. Go figure. But he said, "Hey, I can only be there on a Sunday. Can you guys do the tour?" And it's like, well, the construction site is typically closed on Sunday, but since this is the only day that you're going to be there, we'll make it happen for you. So he did his, I think he was flying into left field, like Southwest or American Airlines, whatever he did. So he brought a female colleague with him that was someone that had a lot of interest in architecture or construction, or someone that was like their profession. So it was the former Air Force pilot, his colleague, the female with architecture, construction background, and then me, and then the construction. Lindbeck is our construction team, and they are top notch. I mean, they're top notch. I can't say enough good things about Lindbeck. But the person that was representing Lindbeck was a former Navy guy. So you got former Navy, former Army, former Air Force, and then this female. So we're standing out in the middle of the construction site. It's closed. There's no workers there. It's only us. That's it. And of course, we're doing what typical former service guys do. We're bickering back and forth, like, the Army's got the best mega column, even though all of them are the same, but the Army's the best. There's like, nope, the Navy, we got this special thing. And then the Air Force, like, oh no, we got this. And you guys couldn't do it without us or whatever. So we're kind of bickering back and forth. And this female says, hey, can you show me which one's the Marine Corps mega column? It's like, yeah. And they're all going to be labeled and branded and all that, so people will know. But since we're still in construction, it's hard to tell. So she says, can you show me where the Marine Corps mega column is? It's like, yep, it's right there. And then she says, can you take my picture? It's like, sure, no problem. And I took a couple pictures of her, and then she just started crying. And I was like, oh man. I was like, hey, did we say something that, did we go a little far, or, because I'm trying to remember, like, did we say something about Marines not being able to read, or, they call it with crayons, whatever. Did we say something? And she said, no. My father, who's passed, was a former Marine, and, not a Medal of Honor recipient, but he served in the Marines. So me standing beside the Marine Corps mega columns brings me closer to my dad, because he's not here. And it's just a special moment. And it's like, wow, like that hit hard, that was a heart punch. And I was just thinking to myself, like, hey, this place isn't even built yet. Like, we're still under construction. Like, it's not even 50% done yet. And it's having that type of impact. And to tell you another really quick heart punch story, is you talk about a heart punch, being on the site with Medal of Honor recipients. Because some of our big functions, like we're getting ready to have one, football's getting ready to start. And, Charlotte Jones is the chairwoman of our board, and she's the executive vice president and the chief branding officer of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, super successful, wicked smart. She's ignited our fundraising. She's one of the main reasons why, we're able to build this place. And, that relationship that we have with the Cowboys, they put on a salute to service game every year. And this year it's going to be November 12th, the Cowboys versus the Giants in Arlington at AT&T. And the Medal of Honor recipients are invited. So we typically have, 10 to 15. But talk about a heart punch is when we have that many recipients. And because keep in mind, there's only 66 and most of them are Vietnam era. So they're getting up there. So to have 10 or 15 of them at one time is like, it's a miracle. But I've been on site before, and I've heard one of the recipients say, I just want to be alive when this place opens. I just want to be alive when the doors open. That's a heart punch, dude. That's a heart punch. And it's like it's like if you don't have a why in the morning, or if you're not have a little pep in your step, or you're not a little bit motivated to go over to that construction site, even though it's like 110 degrees. And one of my jokes, I do these little short videos from time to time. It's like, dude, it is so hot in Texas. The fire ants are actually on fire. I say a little crazy stuff like that, but that's the reason why, so many people are working so hard to get this thing done and are so passionate about it. That's why.
I had a neighbor who was a World War II veteran. You wouldn't know it. For many years that I was a kid, growing up, I didn't know he was a Bronze Star recipient. He got a chance to go on one of the honor flights to the World War II Memorial in D.C. It was, to talk to him after the fact. It was just, and they're all humble, right? It's I think the same with any recipient, really. It seems like nobody ever gets in front of the podium when they get the medal pinned on and say, yep, did this all myself.
Yep.
Nobody helped.
So proud of myself.
Yeah, it's just for me. Nobody's, and I mean, but it's not, how do you say this? They truly embody everything that they say. They mean it, right? And you can tell when people mean it, right? I watched Matt Williams' ceremony on TV, near and dear to my heart because he's a third grouper.
Were
Ron
you former
Scher,
third grouper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Ron Scher the same way. Now Ron's passed, rest his soul, but when you look at these men that loosely know from group or whatever the case is, and then you talk to after the fact, you have to know. And I think I've heard several of them say it. The easy part was getting it. The hard part is wearing it, right? Because I know there's many, many demands on their time after the fact. But it's a testament to what you said about Roy Benavides. I've heard his story no less than 30 times, going through the medic course. Every graduation, whatever it might have been, it was Roy Benavides hour, right? But it never, ever, ever gets old. And for those reasons that you mentioned earlier, he was such a good human being, and just a test. I don't know. He's just one of my heroes. I can't say enough about that guy.
I mean, I didn't even mention when I was telling the stories and the highlights. I mean, Roy was so bad. Like, he was in such bad shape. They were putting him in a body bag. They were zipping him up in a body bag. The dude couldn't talk. Like, he was laying there awake and he couldn't communicate to say, hey, bro, I'm still alive. Don't zip the body bag. The only thing he could do is muster a little bit of spit and spit in the dude's face to say, like, hey, bro, I'm alive. I'm not dead. I look pretty bad, I know, but I'm still alive, man. I mean, holy cow. Like, man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can't beat a guy like that.
Yeah.
That, I've heard of, his story. if you haven't done it and you're watching, just go Google Roy Benavides. You'll come up with a YouTube video, and it'll probably be his video they gave. I think it was here, or the speech he gave down here in San Antonio, Texas. But if that doesn't pump your patriot bulb, then there ain't nothing in this. You're hopeless.
Oh man, here's a funny thing about Roy Benavides too. Is one of my 10th group colleagues, a guy named Gary Garza, recently retired sergeant major, and he entered the Army from Texas, and I think it might have been down in the area where Roy was. And so he's a brand new kid, first day in the Army, like at MEPS or whatever. And it was Roy Benavides that was there wishing them good luck and shaking people's hands. And Roy was a bigger guy toward the latter part of his life. He's a bigger guy. And so Gary, who, went on to have this very distinguished, great special forces career, sergeant major, all that type of stuff, lots of combat rotations. Gary remembers, like, oh, who's this dude? Roy Benavides. Like, because you don't know when you're 18 years old, like, you're dealing with a flipping legend, like a walking legend. But when you don't know, you don't know. And Gary always goes back to that time. It's like, oh my gosh, like I would have loved to have known what I know now, and I could have went up to him, shook his hand, gave him a man hug, told him that you loved him. I mean, thank you for your service. Thanks for being a great example. Just to hear that story kind of makes me chuckle. Like, he was there, and when Roy was still alive, it's like, man, it's crazy.
But I think the beautiful part about what you're doing, Daryl, is you've enabled that for the next generation now. You've enabled it through the use of technology and integration. So now that 16, 17-year-old kid who may be thinking about service, who comes to the museum, gets that chance. He gets front loaded with that knowledge. He gets to interact with that guy, at least, in the virtual world, which is the way the younger generation interacts anyway. And now he can say what he wants to say. You know what I mean? When you take that vision for what the story that you just told, and you say, I am enabling that now, you as an organization, obviously, are enabling that for the next generation. We'll definitely spread the word to anybody that we know, obviously, but I would love for that thing to have a line in front of it every day of the year for the next 100 years, because I think that's our debt that we owe to those who have gone before us also. So
yeah, me too, man. And we've been talking about this, and I feel like I've hyped it up a little bit. And I think part of it, when you get excited about something and people are listening and they're like, okay, man, this is so cool. And it's okay, Arlington, Texas, March 2025. But what can I do? Like, is there something that I can do? So I do have a call to action for today. Like, if people want to do something, if they're so inspired, and I love to tell this story too, because I think it's really special. And this is another one from the heart. But I've been doing a lot more speaking engagements, and I had one last week or the week before at one of the hotels in Fort Worth or Dallas. I can't remember. But I did a speaking engagement, I had a slideshow and all that type of stuff. And got toward the end and have a call to action. And it's like, hey, we're still trying to fundraise, with our capital campaign. We still need, to this day, $41 million to get us over the finish line. And that's to finish construction. That's to finish the exhibit design and, operating costs, all those things. So we still need $41 million. And, I was going through this, like, hey, you've seen the pictures of the museum. It's beautiful, all that. But, we still need money. And it's like, well, how are we going to get to $41 million? Probably not going to have one person write a check for $41 million, but we're going to have a bunch of great Americans that are going to give $1 or $5 or $100 or $1,000, $10,000, all the way up. Like, we're going to have those people, and they're all going to chip in, and we're going to get to that 41 million. One way or the other, we're going to do it. And thank God we have Charlotte Jones that's leading the efforts with a very talented development team that's working with her. But I I went through this spill, and then afterwards, there was a young gal that came up to me and said, "Hey, that was a really good speech. Thank you for being our keynote and all that type of stuff." She said, "Hey, I'm very sorry. I'm not a wealthy woman. I don't make a lot of money, but I want to give you this." And she had a $20 bill, and she said, this is all I can do, but I wanted to do something. I want to do something to help you guys. And that's, I mean, to some people that, that could equate to like $1 million check, but for her, that was $20. That meant the world to her. And it was just, bless you.
Thank you.
It was such a nice, like, hey, this is my contribution. So that was, man, that was really special. And all of those things matter. But so for the call to action today, I want to be able to tell and spread the word for people like, hey, what can you do? Obviously, donate. That would help us out a lot. We're trying to raise $41 million. You can go to our website. It's www.mohmuseum.org. And you can see the donate button there. And if that doesn't work for you, you can shoot me an email, and I can send you all of my stuff. I know you guys have it, but actually, I'll give out my cell phone number right now, my personal cell phone number. It's 940-315-4006. If you have any problems with making a donation, just shoot me a text and I'll get you connected with the right people. But that is one way to help. And it's, like I said, we're going to get to 41 million from all those people across the country doing $1, $5, 10, 100,000, all that. Another thing that you can do for us is you can support us and tell folks about us. Cause I know that was something I ran into at the Museum of the Bible. Here we are building a $550 million museum in the nation's capital, 430,000 square foot. Is ginormous. And you'd walk a block away and somebody be like, "Oh, hey, who are you? What do you do?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm part of this museum thing." It's like, "What museum?" The Museum of the Bible. It's like, they're building a Bible museum in Washington, D.C. Like, are you serious? Like, people are just clueless. So something that you can do to help us, support us, tell people about us so they know. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the different Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow me. I do a lot of updates. I do a ton of updates actually on the Medal of Honor. I'm not a hard guy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I typically do a lot of videos. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all that other type of stuff. Do a bunch of stuff. Do a bunch of updates. So that's another thing that you can do is follow us, support us. You can volunteer. I can get you linked up with the folks, once we do open and we get closer. We actually have volunteers now that work with us. Some people come in and they'll help us, put letters together and send things off. And I mean, we just have a lot of people that are like, "Hey, I want to do something." Sometimes we have people that help open doors and greet people for some of our events. And we do have some actually super cool events with, some of our Medal of Honor recipients. And a lot of people love to meet Chris Cassidy, Navy SEAL, NASA astronaut, all that type of stuff. So, we have volunteers. You can come visit the construction site. You guys have an open invite whenever you want to come and visit. Just reach out. For the listeners out there, if you want to reach out and send me an email, connect with me, shoot me a text. I'd be happy to try to facilitate that. Please come visit once we open March 2025. Come check us out. We'd love to share these really powerful story. Another thing, one of our big partners is Black Rifle Coffee. Big partners of ours. This is how great Black Rifle Coffee Company is. There is Medal of Honor blend. That's Black Rifle Coffee. And you can get it in the regular bags of coffee, or it's Medal of Honor blend in the K-Cups, which I think I'm probably more of a foo-foo coffee drinker. I do the K-Cups, so I'm not like a hardcore like Evan Hafer, the CEO of Black Rifle. But, Black Rifle is set up, if you buy a bag of coffee that's National Medal of Honor blend, or you buy the K-Cups, National Medal of Honor blend, 100% of the proceeds goes right back to the foundation. 100%. We don't pay for anything. We don't pay for the packaging, the brand, none of that. They pay for all of that. And if someone buys that coffee and drinks it, we get all of those proceeds. Plus, they're a big partner of ours on the donation side. So that is a very special relationship that means a lot to me, because Evan Hafer is a former Special Forces dude, and Matt Best, former Ranger Regiment guy. I mean, like those dudes are awesome. But that's another way that you can support us. So I think I've listed several things that you can do there. I hope that people are jazzed up and interested about us and want to learn more. You can go to our website and read about some of these amazing recipients. It's going to be a very special project. And, this is a project for America. This is America's museum.
Absolutely. It's marketed and branded as in America's city with America's team, America's museum,
America's coffee, Black Rifle
Yeah,
Coffee.
America's coffee.
Geez, dude, the list goes on.
You just can't get any more red, white, and blue, man. And to tell you the truth, Daryl, we're happy to help you do exactly the same thing. We have the ability to do some advertising in our game, and we'll work through the details after the show here. But honestly, we're happy to help you get the word out on social media, on anything that we touch also. So if you're out there listening now, I put the link for donations into the chat on Twitch. If you have the means and you are so inclined, please go to the link, donate what you can. It doesn't take much. The more of us that donate, the faster this thing gets done. And the reason we're trying to get it done is for the exact reason that Daryl stated earlier, for the Medal of Honor recipients who are currently alive, who want to see that museum open and walk into it. That's our mission. And so, if we can help push that ball down the field at all, we are happy to be able to do it.
Appreciate you guys, man. Appreciate you guys. It means the world. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. And that's a tribe, man. And we all know who our tribe is. And now we're going to figure out how to make this thing happen. And we encourage all you out there listening also, to like, smash, share, get on the social media. I'd love to fill up every Facebook page out there with Medal of Honor Museum donation links, and let people go do what people do. Just be good people. As we come to a close, we got about 4 minutes left here, Daryl. Let me ask you this, man. What have been kind of your challenges with this whole progress for the museum? Has there been anything? I got money's always the challenge, especially in today's economy. But what are some challenges that people might be able to help you with other than money?
Well, some of the challenges I think that we're still working through. Like when I showed up to the project over a year and a half ago, we had this beautiful building, aesthetically pleasing, architectural, pleasing museum. But at least, as a guy that's operated a museum before, a brand new museum, it wasn't an operational museum when I first started looking at the designs and when I first got, involved in this project. So it was beautiful. Great, like the floating steel, mega columns, like gorgeous, but operationally it was lacking, functionality lacking, trying to secure it difficult, because it's a museum just in general is typically difficult to secure, because a museum is designed to be open, inviting, and welcoming. So those are words that, aren't really that coincide with security and keeping people safe and sound and all of that. So I had some difficulties early on, and it wasn't very intuitive either. You walk in and it's like, okay, well, these beautiful spiral staircases going up, do I go up the stairs? Do I go in the building? Do I jump on this elevator? So I've had to work through, me and the team, we've worked through a ton of issues. Another issue was like revenue generation wasn't like really part of the design either. It was just like, okay, so it's not operational, it's not functional, it's hard to secure, and revenue was kind of an afterthought because, to be successful, and yes, we're a nonprofit, but to be successful and to be able to do this mission, we have to make money. Like, it's not all about money. It's all of these other things that it's about, the values and the recipients. But for us to do what we do, we have to make money. It's a business. So a lot of those things that we've had to work through with the team, and we're getting there. We've had some issues with price escalation, on the heels of COVID, and one of the things that we haven't had issues with is getting workers at our site. I mean, all the different trades that are part of building a museum. I mean, these people want to be part of this project. Like, this is a legacy, once in a lifetime type project, and people want to work here. But I would say, yeah, if there's a museum experts out there, we'd love to link up with you guys. We always welcome that. But, our volunteer program would be something simple. We want to keep a large database of folks that are just like, hey, like yesterday at my engagement, I had a former FBI guy that had served in the military. I forgot what branch, but he's like, man, I'd love to just come over and be a docent, like for free, just volunteer my time, and you guys school me up and teach me about everything, but I'd love to do that. So that could be an opportunity for folks, something like that.
All right. And so as our 2 hours have come to a close, Daryl, I just want to say.
That was fast, man. That was
Yeah,
fast.
it was fast, man. And we could, we could do it again. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today. And I want to leave today with a call to action. There's 2 things that you can do for the National Medal of Honor Museum. You can volunteer your time, and you can volunteer your tax-deductible donation to the museum. And if you go on to mohmuseum.org/donate, smash that button. Donate what you can and be part of something bigger than yourself. So thanks to all our listeners out there. Daryl, thank you once again for coming on with us today. And we'll try to do this again in the near future.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Do it.
Absolutely.
Smash that button.
Smash that button. I'm going to smash it right now.
Mark and I have both been in the infantry in the Army. I had been in the Marines prior to that. We both ended up in a unit called 1st Special Forces Group.
I was a sniper in the infantry, been a sniper in special forces, and did a full career in different types of teams: mountain team, air ops team, counterterrorism team. I met Curtis actually at Fort Lewis when he was running a sniper locker, and then we were on a team together in Okinawa. We've been friends, and we've always talked about going into business and life after the Army.
We got out, went to work in the civilian world, and realized a lot of what we did in the military translated to business. We looked at the cutlery industry, and the people there as a culture were fantastic. And we said, hey, we're going to start a knife company here in North Carolina.
In the beginning, we had a knife grinder, a blaster, some rudimentary tools. We started out and decided, what do we want to make? Well, let's make something we know. So it was a combat knife, and we did 3 models because we figured you got to have more than one when you start out.
You think you know everything about knife because you carried one all your life. But to be quite honest, we were new at it. We didn't know everything, so we took them to a lot of our special forces buddies at Fort Bragg. They gave us some advice and allowed us to develop those initial products. Today, we have a whole lot more offerings than we did in those early days. We actually have 3 distinct lines of knives we call gold, silver, and bronze. Gold being the knives we make right here in our shop in North Carolina. The silver line knives are those made for us by our partners up in Olean, New York at K-Bar. And our bronze line are knives we design using US-made steel that are manufactured overseas. A lot of folks think we have a giant manufacturing facility with 100 people. And quite honestly, we have 10 core people that we use to build our knives.
Making a knife isn't as simple as most people think. There are many processes that are involved, so we have checks and balances and continuous quality control throughout the processes. We know that perfection should not get in the way of getting your job done. So while we strive for perfection, we know we'll never achieve it.
I'll never forget the first time we won a Blade Show award because of the rest of the industry, the people who do what we do, saying, hey, you guys have this figured out. We realize quality, it's not just the time we put into making the knives, it's not just the high-end materials or processes or even the money we spend, our raw cost to make those knives. In the end, quality is proven out by the people that hold them and use them, right? If someone's willing to pay for it, and they're willing to carry it, and they're happy to carry it, they might even brag about it. To us, that's the measure of quality. We don't chase trends. We don't put things on knives that don't need to be there. We always joke, and I know this sounds ultra simplistic, sharp, pointy, with a comfortable handle. You do those 3 things, you're probably going to be successful in knife making. And I think if you can take a look at a knife It's very, very simple, but you can immediately say, I know who designed that, or I know who made it. To me, that's a measure of success. I mean, that's what we try to do here at Spartan Blades.
Both Curtis and I care about our country. We fought for it. We took our oath seriously and still do to this day. So, since our product goes to end users who use it in the most ultimate fight, we take it seriously, what we make. That when it goes in a box and it gets sent to a customer, that it's ready to go wherever you need to go. And it's going to be there and perform. And that's what we strive for every day.